Hi neighbors, Althea Burke here, owner of Day Defined Health and Life Coaching. Excited does not even begin to capture how I'm feeling right now. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of hosting a critical conversation with Christina Duren, who is the founder of Beautiful Brown Girls, on the civil unrest in the USA and the necessity of healing and supportive spaces for Black women by Black women. My first introduction to Christina Duren was when she was a panelist on Meetup.com's deep dive on impact communities for Black justice and equity. She shared so much wisdom there, and when that conversation ended, I was like, I have to talk to her and get more of the story. But don't worry, you don't have to hear that conversation to be in the loop here. So, our fantastic guest founded Beautiful Brown Girls in March of 2010. And over the past decade, Beautiful Brown Girls has blossomed into so much more than a brunch club. It's a community made up of 29 chapters and 48,000 members, and each chapter is a sister circle. So not only do members get to bond over a delicious meal, but they can also become agents for change in their own communities. Beautiful Brown Girl members create memorable experiences rooted in sisterhood and love to create a safe space for women of color to thrive through insightful articles, thoughtful conversations, and webinars with inspiring Black women. Christina believes Beautiful Brown Girls is proof of what can happen when you find your people. So for the next 25 minutes or so, we're going to talk about the effects of George Floyd's death on Black women, the state of racial injustice in America in 2020, and backlash against Black and Black women-only spaces. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Christina, how are you doing today? I'm so happy to have you here with me.
I am doing great. I am honored. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited about this conversation.
Absolutely. I first learned about you and your organization, Beautiful Brown Girls, when I was witnessing or had signed up to watch Meetup.com's deep dive on impact. And I was really captivated by the gems that you shared. And I was like, there is so much more that we can discuss and where we want to go, where we can go with this conversation. So thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this conversation and kind of finishing the rest of the story, if you will. So I read a bit about Beautiful Brown Girls, but the question that comes up for me is, what is it in your history or in your own lived experiences that allowed you to even dream about starting an organization that has spanned a decade and now has over 48,000 members? Can you tell me a little bit about your history and how that led you to start Beautiful Brown Girls?
Yes, and 10 years ago, I had this bright idea, but just to take it a step back, I lived in New York City, but I was originally from Miami. Coming back from New York to Miami, I had spent most of my adult years in New York for work, and I was kind of coming back to a new city, it felt like, even though I was born and raised here. And I had missed the camaraderie of my friends in New York. So you come back to a new city and you're like, okay, I'm 30 plus. I want to find friends and not look awkward because I knew how important it was for my sister circle back in New York to just kind of be there for me. And I had just had my daughter, so I was a new mom. And I was like, I need to find my tribe here, but I don't know how to do that. But I did know of Meetup, so I felt very comfortable with Meetup and meeting new people and being able to start those kind of connections. So as I was looking through Meetup, I just didn't feel like I connected with any of the groups. I'm like, okay, I want it to be a social environment. I don't want it to feel too networking. I really just want authentic, genuine connections that could lead to friendships. So when I didn't find the group that I felt like connected with myself, I thought back, like, what did I do in New York that really connected me with my friends there? And we went to brunch all the time. There's a big brunch culture in New York. And I said, okay, that's a very social environment to where I can at least, if nothing else, try a new restaurant, a new food or something like that, learn this new city, quote unquote, that I'm in, even though I was born and raised here. But I was coming back, you know, in a different mindset. And that's what prompted me to say, let me try to start this brunch club on Meetup. And from there, the first Meetup is really what solidified me to continue the work. So many different walks of life. I mean, ladies who were deans at university, lawyers, photographers. I'm like, where were you ladies like that I probably would not have been able to meet just walking down the street?
Right.
We had such a great conversation that first brunch to where it just felt like a connection among sisters. And I knew that if they were seeking that, more people are also seeking that space. The second thing that kind of solidified the work for me too is during that time, it was the reality TV boom. There was Basketball Wives. There was every woman of color on TV throwing drinks at each other. And I remember watching one episode, and not to knock reality TV because we all need mindless TV sometime. I remember watching one episode and I said to myself, that's not my world. Like that doesn't represent me as a Black woman. And I wanted to be able to create a space to where I can show how we are actually the togetherness of Black women, the sisterhood of Black women, the empowering of Black women, that those spaces are there. And I really wanted to amplify that message as well too. So wanting to find authentic and genuine connections, plus also wanting to create the world that I saw, that I felt was authentic to me, is what prompted me to start the group. The group has grown since then to so many other things, but that was kind of the beginnings.
Right, right. I can remember growing up and, you know, after church, for example, we would have Sunday brunch with my
Yes.
aunts and my cousins. And those are like really standout and memorable occasions. And even if you're not feeling like talking too much, you can just keep your head in your plate, you know, but
Yeah.
at least you have the camaraderie
Exactly.
with family
Around
and
you.
friends. Yeah.
That energy, you can feel it when it's real, when it's authentic, when it's genuine. It's a very soul healing energy. I feel like that coming together as people of color. And I felt that the first brunch, and I wanted to just continue it from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it was something that you felt was missing, does that mean that growing up, that was something that you saw, that community, that togetherness, that
Yes.
that that calmness, really,
Yeah. And
something
it's
that's different from the drama on the TV culture,
100%. I
reality TV.
remember early on in my days, I would be the the weirdo, the weird one who will write down the moments I felt good. Like I went out with so-and-so and it was an amazing experience. And I would just kind of document moments that I really felt a happiness kind of situation. And a lot of those moments included holidays with my family, spending just close time with family members, friends. And it was just having those people around me that I felt were in my corner, that I could be 100% myself with, were moments that really helped me to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking back on when I started the group was what moment in my life where I felt really 100% myself, able to grow as a woman of color, and that was going to brunch with my friends,
yeah.
kind of thing. And that propelled the idea of the brunch club.
Okay. So for the beginner entrepreneur or the person that is watching this video who has an idea, would you tell them to kind of go through the files of their memory banks and see what is that experience or those experiences that you want to
100%.
duplicate? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you're creating, everything starts with intention. So where does your intention lie when you are starting something business-wise, side hustle-wise? They always say, what's your passion? Like what makes you, so excited when you think about it? It may not make you money tomorrow, but
Mm-hmm.
it will bring such a calmness, such a happiness, because that foundation of intention and when you're starting something really is so important to help you really build. And that's what's sustained me for 10 years, because I'm sure you can imagine within a decade, lots have come where I'm like, screw it all.
You quit 20 times in a day. Yeah.
Exactly. But then I have to come back to the foundation. What's the foundation? And that is cultivating and creating connections among women of color, and that foundation really propels me to keep going.
Okay, so that's a beautiful segue into my next question for you, about the necessity of emotional support and cultivating those spaces for connection with Black women.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tie it into the murder of George Floyd, because that
Mm-hmm.
seemed to have been like our culture's
Mm-hmm.
moment. Like
Yeah.
it was so big, it created ripple effects in all communities across the country.
Right. I
Um,
would say a few things happened prior to the death of George Floyd. One thing we were seeing in general with ladies who were attending is Black women have this superwoman mindset, to where we feel that we just gotta push through. We gotta push through. And I feel like getting to the point where we saw George Floyd, even though we've seen many others die, be murdered, unfortunately, the world saw George Floyd unfortunately murdered, and it became a really critical point in our nation where it's no longer a Black thing. It's a basic human rights thing. And we have not just Black people who are saying this is a problem, white people of other ethnicities,
yeah.
allies who are saying, I see that there's a problem. So once we kind of got to that point, it became even more critical, especially with the superwoman mindset of Black women, to be like, do I cry? How do I even sit in this moment and be sane? Mothers who have children growing up. I'm a mom of a daughter who is also seeing the chaos around us. They're looking to us to say, how do we even navigate in this moment? And us being in a superwoman mindset sometimes really didn't give us the space to just be, to be frustrated, to cry, to just scream, in a like-minded space where we felt that we would be supported, we would be encouraged, and not someone telling us, well, what about this? I don't want to hear what about anything else. I've lived this entire life as a Black woman and had gone through so many experiences similarly to those that could lead to George, George Floyd's untimely death because just of the color of my skin. So it kind of pointed out to me that at this point, it is so important to have just a safe space to be a Black woman,
Mm-hmm.
to have like-minded support around you. And that's really kind of what we focused on after the death of George Floyd is, are you okay, sis?
Yeah.
Let me be here to talk with you kind of thing.
Right, right. And for those who aren't familiar with this superwoman mindset or the superwoman syndrome, as it's been coined, what we're talking about is the response to trauma or to
Yeah,
devastation where you numb out, where you
yeah,
disconnect, or you just push through,
yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
that is something that has been passed down through the generations. Mind you,
Generational.
it's adaptive, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
life is hard, so you can't be like
Right.
crying every second. You got to move forward. But in moments when there's tragedy, rather than
Yes.
bottling up, what these spaces, these emotional healing spaces do is allow people to check in on one another and
Yeah.
allow for a release.
Yes. Totally. And even going outside of the death, we're in a pandemic,
Yeah.
we're in election season. We are at the height of crazy, is what I call it at this point. And it has weighed so heavy on people, but Black women specifically, because we are also the backbone of so many movements to try to create change, to create better for our culture, that a lot of it weighs on us to be, okay, I have to make sure that even though I'm hurt, I'm taking care of, my daughter, or I'm making sure I'm paying the bills and going to work. So it is so important when it comes to really creating spaces to know that we sometimes talk ourselves out of having rest and having that emotional peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that firsthand with so many of our members, where they were just on Facebook, I would see ladies just talking about it in posts, and just their frustration. You could feel that emotional heaviness. It's like, I don't know where to go at this point. I have given 100%. You guys have dumped even more on me. And it's like, I need someone to pick me up and encourage me. And it is generational. We saw our grandmothers, we saw our mothers push through, many not crying, not really releasing emotionally, but because we just couldn't, we have to make sure that the family moves forward, we move forward. And it's time to really take a step back and look at how can we be there for ourselves and for our sisters.
Mm. What I'm really getting the sense of, Christina, is at the heart of this type of emotional support is like intimacy.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That comfort, that rest, that peace
Yes.
you're talking about, where you're like, I know you've got me. I know you have my best interests at heart.
Yes.
Cue the tears, cue the release.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're frustrated and we want to just be loved authentically. We just want to know you got my back 100%. And anyone who has felt that, whether that be with a spouse or a child, that feeling. That feeling feels safe. That feeling feels loved. That feeling just encourages you and empowers you to keep going. And many of us, whether we live alone, we're in a pandemic where we haven't seen family in probably months. It's like, where do I go now, kind of as a solo person, to get that support. So thankfully, from the brunch club idea, we had grown into so many more. I features for the brunch club. Ladies basically are able to go join our members network. It's similar to Facebook. We call it it's like Beautiful Brown Girls for Facebook.
Yeah.
But it's a similar thing to where you can sign up, you can post on your feed, create your profile, connect with other members with like-minded interests. We also do monthly inspirational challenges. So for example, this month we were focusing on emotional wellness. So we had daily prompts for the ladies to journal, write down your feelings, or we also started doing monthly Zoom chat check-ins where it's like, hey, you just want to check in with someone and see a face and talk to someone for, 30 minutes. Let's do that. And we've had such a great response of women who just saying, I just needed that for the day, a moment for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're making it convenient and easily accessible, which is also
Right.
a key when, you've got so much on the go. That sounds
Yes.
amazing. Uh,
Yes.
Christina, what I want to ask you next is, so often when we have these conversations about racism and racial injustice, it'll be ended with like, my goodness, it's 2020. It's 2020 and this stuff is still happening and it's so absurd. I can't believe it. Like what's being proclaimed with that it's 2020? Like what do you think people are trying to say? Like or even when you say it, what is that? What are we trying to convey?
We have gone through this for hundreds of years. It has been hundreds of years of injustice. And how are we still here? But I also feels like it has it also says is we're at our breaking point. It's not going to continue. We can't continue like this. We can't sustain like this. Everyone needs to come to the table to understand how systemic racism has been created to not that doesn't help people of color to propel. And let's create community, whether that be with allies or within ourselves, to move forward, because we have to move forward at this point because we're at a breaking point, I think, in our society.
Mm-hmm. So with allies or amongst ourselves, what's the importance of connecting with like-minded people in healing from race-related trauma?
I would say the importance is to be able to grow. I think sometimes with racism, it unfortunately muzzles us
Mm-hmm.
because we have to overthink before we do things, unfortunately, because just of the color of our skin. And giving us the power to be ourselves authentically 100% opens up so many doors for entrepreneurship, for healing within our community. It really is what will help us to grow as a society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really does. And I can remember, I'm a Canadian living in the States, and I grew up in a primarily or predominantly white community. And when I got around Black women and we were able to have certain conversations, in my mind, I was like,
It blows your mind.
right. Oh, we're
Right.
talking about this? You think that too? And then you leave like, I am not crazy. Like, I didn't make this up,
Yes.
right? I did not
Yes.
make this up.
That's how I felt literally after our first brunch. My mind was blown with the ladies that had come to that brunch. Mind you, we had not known each other. We had all just they had found the meetup and came and attended. And I was like, wow, I'm not the only person going through this. I felt like there's other people that are like me,
Mhm.
simply just going through the same things, and I can count on them to be there to understand when I am complaining about something. Like it's not a brush off, they get it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
It really does blow your mind when you experience it.
And that understanding alone can just put that fuel in your tank, eh? Like it
Mhm.
just gives you that extra little bit of, okay, I got
Mhm.
this. Let me keep
Yes.
going. Let me keep going. Um,
Yes.
so love, support, empowerment, those are the pillars of Beautiful Brown Girls. Um, where do you get these things to refuel as an organizer?
That's a great question. I always tell our team, I'm also a member too. Myself had issues as the whole Superwoman Syndrome. Also, just trusting my own voice because I muzzled myself so much to just say, let me be quiet and not cause confusion. So, growing up, you learn all those things that you now have to unlearn and reteach yourself. So
Hmm.
I go through all of the exercises, all of the inspirational challenges with the members too, because the breakthrough is happening within myself as well, just as I'm experiencing all of this trauma and tragedy around me. So I continuously try to look at myself as growing with the memberships. I always say the members move the movement. It's not the Christina show. It's let's all be there for each other, myself included. So
Hmm.
I continuously try to grow using a lot of the tools and tactics that we have. A great team of ladies who provide such great content for our group to keep connected. And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I truly ask myself, would I do it? When we're setting up a campaign or going to do an event, I'm like, how does this fulfill me? And if I can't see a fulfillment of me, it doesn't work. So I always start with the foundation of why we're starting doing something, and just making sure that it is of value as well to the members.
Hmm. I mean, the fact that you're in there doing the work, unlearning,
Yes,
relearning with the
yes.
members, you consider yourself a member. That's a true sign of a leader for me. Someone who's not like pointing the finger, looking down their nose. They're like, I'm in
Right,
here with you. Let's do this
right.
together.
Right. I'm experiencing tragedy and trauma just as everyone else. And I give myself that space to feel too. Because
Hmm.
sometimes leading a group, especially as large as we've grown, you can get very lost in the business of it all,
Hmm.
because it does turn into a business at some point. But the intention, I continuously every day remind myself the intention of the women who need this, including myself, especially during the pandemic when things turned more virtual. I was kind of caught up like, how can I still serve? Like I also have I'm a preacher's kid, so I have grown up in that world of service, and that has always stuck with me. So once we transitioned to more virtual events, we had to kind of tailor the events to still be able to be of service. I mean, on a Zoom call, you want to make sure that you're still some way being able to connect. So we really sat down and came up with a different business plan virtually to connect and keep the ladies who may need other people, to check in on them connected to. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, yeah. How big is your like immediate team?
Our immediate team is 10.
Hmm.
Plus, I should say 10 plus 29. So we have 29 organizers. We have 29 chapters.
Yeah.
Each chapter has an organizer in their local area because we still, hopefully, after this pandemic, can continue back with our monthly brunches. So we do a monthly brunch in each of our local chapters. Plus, we have a team of 10 who handles all of our online content. So we do Facebook live stream shows where we have our a few hosts as well as our Zoom chat check-ins, and then community managers who help create all of our monthly content on social as well as within the community.
Okay. So this is a well-oiled machine that's
It is
that's
now.
moving
It
here.
wasn't before. I have learned as we've gone, kind of thing, because it was a side hustle for me. I wouldn't even say a side hustle for me. It started out as me wanting to find friends,
Hmm.
and it was fun and games. I loved it. I still do, but I got caught up in the, let's have a great time. But then I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, we have now 5 chapters. Let's scale this because more women need this. And that's when I had to put the business hat on of let's really make efficient processes so that this is sustainable and scalable because it's needed.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you have like content or a video explaining like your journey through business? Like, because I feel like this is like an area that a lot of people are like into right now. They're just like, you know what, the economy is, it's shut down on me. I'm not going to get caught again. Let me start my own thing. Is there information that you're putting out there about that?
I will be soon. The first thing that we will be rolling out is just branding yourself. When we first started out with the Beautiful Brown Girls term, there was a lot of things I never even thought about, like trademarking, making sure that we have all of our social handles. So my background and also career-wise is digital marketing. So I do plan on putting out a few courses now that we have so much time in the house. But it was something I learned as I went, and I'm thankful for a lot of mentors who kind of saw me growing and said, hey, let me help you as well too. So I would always encourage, if someone is trying to start out and not sure, there's a plethora of courses, webinars that the good old internet has provided us. And I just sat and started reading and started studying and started looking at what others were doing and said, okay, let me just recreate that. But you have to also, that's a choice, especially if it's something that is not income based right now. You can easily say, okay, let me put this aside because I gotta do X, Y, and Z. And of course, make sure you're able to pay your bills. But what is it rooted in? The intention, again, as I always go back to, will always continuously keep you wanting to learn more, to grow it. So that is what helped me.
You seem like you're the type of woman who is fueled by just genuine, like there's an authenticity about you. It's like there's nothing that you're doing for you, for the money or for the profit or for the showiness of it. It's like I wanted friends, so I started this, and now it's grown, and I needed this information, so I studied it, even though I'm not getting anything right away, from it. But it's
the heart of it was the love for wanting to be there for Black women. It truly is. I am the only child, not an only child, excuse me, the only girl. So I didn't have,
you just forgot about the other, your brothers.
Wait a minute, there's more. The only girl. Yeah. So growing up, I seeked out friendships, at a very young age, because I just wanted to have girls around me to talk about girly stuff with, not my brothers, that kind of thing. So at the very foundation of it, I just love to be around awesome women who are just enlightening conversations, or just a good kiki. Like that fuels me. So that has just always been my go-to. Once I meet another lady that I'm like, wow, I could do a brunch today and blow my mind with the ladies I meet. And it's like, feels like day one, and it's so enjoyable for me.
I love to hear that. So I am keeping an eye on our time. I can talk to you for so long, and you're so down to earth. It feels so just inviting, right? So I'm just here with you, but I'm keeping an eye on our time. And so for our last question, Christina, I'm wondering about, so we talked about the state of racial injustice.
Yeah.
And the importance of connecting with like-minded people when you're healing, and just to kind of get that intimacy and just kind of kick it a bit. There are people who are like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, what's happening in America is not that big of a deal, right? Are racial tensions, gender issues that deep to call for Black and or women-only spaces? And like, what's at the heart of the backlash against these types of groups, in your opinion?
I will say, within the last year or two is when we have seen the most hate against our group, which it kind of surprised me in the beginning. We started getting letters saying, why can't I join? But there was one issue for sure that was wrong with that letter, because nowhere on our site where we say white women or if you're not a woman of color, you cannot join. The name of the group, of course, is Beautiful Brown Girls. So, of course, the information and content is going to be geared to empowering women of color. And it makes me sad for those who feel that just because we're creating content to uplift women of color, it's a problem. I'm like, that alone kind of showed me the state of America at this point, because there's plenty of spaces for everyone.
Yeah.
There's a plethora of spaces.
Plethora, yes.
So I didn't understand why they were like, well, why can't I have that space? And to that, it's because this space is needed for us to be fully 100% ourselves. We all know as Black women where we go to work and sometimes we have to put on that face. It's exhausting. That's why I need a place of rest, kind of thing. You are more than welcome to join. And that is my reply always when I get those messages. You are more than welcome to join. I actually encourage it because you need a place to listen and hear what is the problems, really understanding it. But we also need a place to amplify our message. People who are really rooted in amplifying the message of justice for people of color. So I also kind of look at it as a sacred space. Thankfully, we haven't had many issues in terms of women-only group, because it's very well known and popular now that women need spaces for themselves as well too. We see more of the backlash it being supposedly for only Black women, but I also have invited people into the space. I also have made it clear that it is not a space to necessarily push anyone away, but it is a space for us to be comfortable. It is a space where we will encourage and empower Black women, and you are more than welcome to attend, or, and I'm sorry you don't feel like you can be, it's your feeling at that point. It's not something we are necessarily saying. It's a personal issue. I think that it kind of amplifies, like, you got an issue you need to figure out with yourself now. Because like I said, if you don't feel like you could join this group, join another group. That's okay. And I don't have the answer in terms of how to even fix it, but I do always say I approach it with love, just as I do with everything else. And people see the sacredness in that and they leave it alone at that point, kind of thing too. So it's just a, double-edged sword a little bit. And we are unfortunately in a nation where we are being divided from literally the top down. So the messages have increased recently, but it does not stop where it actually fuels me to be like, we need this even more.
Which messages have increased now?
In terms of people saying, how can you create a group just for Black women?
Okay. Yeah. And like you said earlier, it's like, if that is a concern, the problem lies with the questioner. It really makes me wonder, what is the fear? What is the suspicion? What do you think we're doing? Why do you need to surveil? Like, what's definitely.
And it shows the systemic racism that has been built in this country, because they learned that from their parents, and that parents learned that from their grandparents, and they're just they're doing what they think is right. But unfortunately, we're at a critical point in this nation where everyone is waking up to basic human rights. It's basic human rights. That's what it is at its core. And people are seeing that and are honestly having to look within to make better choices for themselves.
I could talk to you for so much longer. I love this. Christina, this conversation was such a treat. And viewers, you can keep up with Christina and all things Beautiful Brown Girls on Facebook at Beautiful Brown Girls. And there is an Instagram and their Facebook group at Beautifully Shaded. And then finally on Twitter at Beautiful Brown You.
Yes.
Ladies can also sign up to become a member of a local sister circle at members.beautifulbrowngirls.com. And I'm going to post all this information in the caption or description box below, so don't worry about memorizing it. Christina, thank you so much for joining me today, and really for all the work that you're doing to create these safe spaces that are rooted in love and intimacy and connectedness. Just thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, for sure. I appreciate it. And as many ways that I can always amplify the amazingness of women of color, I jump to it. So I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Well, I hope this is not going to be our last conversation, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well.
Okay, bye-bye.